Good evening, everyone. Serena Polverino here, Content Manager at Apps Builder. A very warm welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining today's webinar on how to improve your app design and boost your chances of getting your app published on the stores. So we have received very positive feedback from all of you on our resources dedicated to this subject. So we thought that it was the right time to create a webinar entirely dedicated to app design do's and don'ts. Of course, when it comes to app design, there would be loads of topics to cover. So we have decided to start with the two most crucial elements of any application. I'm talking about the app icon and splash image. Well, the reason is quite easy. The reason why we decided to start with these two elements is because they are compulsory if you want to submit your application to the major stores. Moreover, along with the app title, there are the only two app elements that cannot be updated in real time once the app has been published. So you really want to make sure that they are professional looking and properly optimized before submitting your app to the stores, right? Absolutely, the last thing that you want is to risk having to resubmit your application to the stores because you realize that your app icon is not appealing enough and fails to catch users' attention. Alright, so we got lots to cover today, so let's have a very quick overview to see what I'm going to go over in this webinar. So first of all, we're going to discuss some amazing figures about the app economy of the past few years. So we're going to take a look at some figures, revenues, and forecasts for 2015. Then we're going to do some considerations together on how the app icon can affect your app success, and we'll see the size requirements to submit your application to the major app stores. And then, of course, we're going to see together some do's and don'ts of designing great app icons. So we're going to see some great tips to boost your chances of getting your app downloaded from stores. And all these tips are absolutely compliant with the store's design guidelines. Then, of course, we're going to take a look at another crucial element of your app design. I'm talking about the splash image. We're going to see together how a good splash image can impact your app success and how it can improve your app's overall usability. Finally, in the final part of this webinar, we're going to host a short Q&A session where you can put forward your questions using the live chats that you find on the right-hand side of this screen, and I'll do my best to answer as many questions as possible. Alright, so let's get started by taking a look at some figures about the App Store ecosystem. So over the past 5 years, we have seen the mobile market explode. During Apple's annual iPad event last October, Tim Cook started talking about numbers on stage, and he said that more than 1 million apps are in the App Store, from 900,000 that were announced at a worldwide developer conference back in June. And when it comes to downloads, we're talking about more than 60 billion total applications that have been downloaded so far, up from the very amazing 50 billion milestone that Apple announced back in May 2013. I'm sure that you all remember that because they were they were giving out discounts and special coupons for the App Store. Well, as regards Apple's major competitor, the latest figures talk about over 1,180,000 Android applications on the market. Although we have to admit that Google seems to remove low-quality applications from the market roughly once a quarter. So in which case, I'd say that the total number of available Android apps probably goes down to roughly 800,000. Anyway, still an amazing figure. I mean, these figures are absolutely amazing, incredible, but if you think that these figures are impressive, you should definitely take a look at the revenues that are generated by the app economy. Back in 2013, yes, Apple declared that 2013 was the annus mirabilis for the Apple App Store. Customers spent $10 billion on apps in 2013, which was highlighted by a record-breaking December with over $1 billion in sales. As for Google Play, well, they pulled in only $1.3 billion in revenue last year. I mean, maybe such huge figures don't really mean much if you read them like that. But if you break these figures down on a daily basis, we are talking about an estimated $5.1 million in revenue from the App Store each day against $1.1 million per day for Google Play. Now, the reason why I decided to bombard you with all these figures is basically because I wanted to give you a rough idea of the huge competition that we have out there in terms of app stores. So no wonder that app developers need to adopt all the solutions to increase their chances of getting their app published and downloaded from the stores. There is an incredible competition out there, and you have, as an app developer, you have to do everything that you can, all you can, to increase your chances of getting your app noted and then downloaded on your consumers' devices. And again, it all starts with an appealing professional-looking app icon that can truly make your app stand out from the crowd. And because design certainly plays a key role in the App Store acceptance process. And this is also the reason why Apple released what is usually called the Human Interface Guidelines, which describe the principles to design a perfectly user-friendly interface that is compliant with all the requirements of the App Store. Now, the very first question that I'll try to answer in today's webinar is what exactly is an app icon and why is it so important to your app success? Well, the app icon is the icon that users download on their smartphone's home screen and the icon that they tap every time they want to start an app. So, in other words, it is the very first thing that users will see in your application, and it will work as a reminder of your app's functionalities. Now, every application needs an icon, of course, and this is not just because it is an element required by the major app stores, but because it is the place where branding and strong visual impact come together into an instantly recognizable, attractive, appealing design. In other words, app icons are not just decorations. If you think they are just decorations, you are sorry, but you are totally wrong. They are a crucial part of the user experience. They communicate your app's first impression, and we all know that you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Now, to better understand the impact that your app icon may have on users, think about shopping for cereals. I mean, when we usually go shopping for cereals, stores are crammed with shelves full of different boxes and brands. Still, we are naturally attracted to the most eye-catching packaging. Then come all the considerations about taste, nutrition facts, and all the other considerations, but only on a second stage. The very first thing that will attract us towards one package or the other is the package itself, the colors and the whole packaging. So exactly the same rule applies to the app stores, where it is proven that users tend to click and then download the most creative and attractive icons among the millions of applications currently available. All right, so we may say so far so good. The trouble comes when you have to decide what exactly is that makes an application attractive, because you know what makes an app stand out from the crowd is totally subjective. Your app icon may look absolutely stunning to your eyes, especially after all the hours of work that you dedicated to it. However, it may not be exactly the same for your prospective consumers, for your prospective clients and users. So, how can we sort it out? Well, the best solution is always the golden rule online. Always be testing. Show your application, your app icon, to as many people as possible before submitting it to the stores. Not only yourself, but also normal people, non-professional people. And try to check their reaction and see if they can figure out what your app is about just by looking at the icon. This is something absolutely important. It is important that people are able to understand what your application is about just by looking at it, from a very quick glance at it. And also remember, being consistent with your brand colors and style is something great, but it doesn't mean a lot at the end of the day if it cannot make you grab people's attention. So it's important to be consistent with your brand, but the important thing is to get your application downloaded. All right, another very important element to keep in mind when designing your app icon is the size criteria. App icons must meet specific size criteria, in order to be displayed correctly on all devices. This one that you are seeing on the screen now is a table that sums up the size formats that are required by the major app stores. As you can see, there is a distinction between the app icon, which is the one that is displayed on a smartphone's home screen, and the store icon, which is the high-resolution version that is available on the marketplace. So remember that if you want to submit your app to the stores, you have to provide icons in two different sizes. One is the one that actually goes on your user's smartphone screen, and the other one is the one that gets displayed on the marketplace. Now, if you want to check the table more in detail, you can download our ebook that is dedicated to app design. It's the App Design Handbook. I will show you at the end of the webinar where you can download for free this resource. And it's basically from our resource center in the section dedicated to ebooks. And in our ebook, you can find the extended version of this table, including also other stores such as BlackBerry 10 and Windows Store, as well as many other tips and user experience considerations to improve your app design. Now, I do realize that that table can be a little bit scary. I can't believe do I really have to provide an app icon in all these sizes? Are you really serious? Well, the thing that you should keep in mind is that one of the greatest benefits of actually relying on a powerful tool like Apps Builder, for example, is that you will not have to worry about each store's size requirements. You will simply be asked to upload your high-resolution app icon in a size of 1024 per 1024 pixels on our platform, and we'll take care of all the resizing work for you. Okay, so now that we know the importance of the app icon, and we also know that it plays a crucial role in user experience, it's time to take a look at some do's and don'ts to keep in mind when designing your app icon. So the number one do is use easily recognizable images. Your app icon, like we said, should be able to talk about your app's features at first sight and across all languages. And that's the main advantage of design. That's the main advantage of using icons. So make sure that you are using universal imagery in your app icon, such an imagery that can be easily recognized by people of different languages and cultures. Also, avoid focusing on secondary aspects or on associations of thought that may not be as universal as you expected. Maybe it's an association that is absolutely natural and normal for you, but it's not something that might be as natural for other culture and for people speaking other languages, for example. Take a look at these icons, for example. Can you figure out immediately what these applications are about? That's a good test. Okay, so let's move on to the second tip to keep in mind to create appealing app icons. Keep it simple. Well, I'm sure that you are already quite familiar with this catchphrase. It's quite famous, especially when it comes to everything that has to do with the online environment and with the mobile world in particular. Now, that's the online world's golden rule. Less is more. I'm sure that you know this catchphrase as well. So try not to cram too many images into your app icon, and figure out your analogy carefully and select one single element to express your app's main functionality. There is an effective way to do this, and basically you have to ask yourself this question. If you could show people just one thing about your app, what would it be? Well, if you manage to answer this question, you got also the answer to the kind of image that you have to display in your app icon. Another very important tip to keep in mind is to look for applications on the stores that have similar features. And of course, my recommendation is that you avoid using the same style, images and colors that have already been used by other applications. Because you want users to download your app. You don't want users to download a lookalike. So try not to copy the style of applications that are already famous and that then probably do the same things that your application does, because these may end up creating confusion in your users and maybe downloading the wrong app. In our next tip, we're going to see something very interesting. And basically, the title says be consistent. Well, you know, much of your app success truly depends on the user experience that your app is able to offer. And the first step towards a satisfying user experience is consistency between your app icon and the internal design. I mean, I'm sure that it has happened to you a lot of times, and this is something very annoying, very frustrating in terms of user experience, that you decide to download an application that had an absolutely stunning app icon. Then you actually open the application on your device and you realize that internal design really doesn't keep the same expectations. How do you feel? I'm sure that it has happened to you at least once as an app user, and I guess that this is something absolutely frustrating and annoying. I guess that the first reaction is probably that you decide to close the application and maybe uninstall the application immediately from your device. I mean, there's no point in designing a glossy, professional-looking app icon if you can maintain the same high expectation with the actual use of your application. There must be total consistency between the two events, tapping your app icon and actually using your application. If you manage to do this, you will have more chances to receive trust and loyalty from your users. And so you will have not just acquired an app users, but a faithful app users, which is exactly something that a professional, a good application, app icon, and professional user experience and design can help you do. Okay, our next two is use a simple color scheme. Color scheme plays a key role in creating your app's look and feel. So make sure that you choose it carefully. If your application refers to an existing brand, of course you can define your app's color scheme based on your company logo and colors. But if this is not your case, remember what we said previously. Keep it simple. A good idea, for example, is to focus on contrast rather than specific colors. This is something very important to keep in mind, especially if most of your users are colorblind, which is something very true, particularly true if your application is addressed to men. So remember that there is a huge amount of people that might be colorblinded, so they're not actually able to notice color, but they might notice they are able to focus on contrast. So that's a very good thing to keep in mind. What I suggest that you do is choosing your main color, preferably a bright one, such as green, orange, red or blue, and then pick a subdued secondary color that doesn't grab too much attention, and it doesn't have to clash with your primary color. You have to create contrast, but you don't want colors to clash one with the other. And another very important thing to keep in mind, avoid text. I mean, if your app icon includes some text, once again, try to focus on contrast to make your text more readable. But this is really if you can do without. But my recommendation is that you avoid text at all. Alright, so these were some of the do's that you have to keep in mind when designing your app icon. But now let's take a look at some don'ts. So the very first is, like I said 1 minute ago, avoid text. I mean, like I said, if you really have to use it, then you can focus on contrast. But the important thing to keep in mind is that an icon is a graphical representation of a word or a concept. So you should stick to the options that are offered by this means of communication, by iconography. I mean, if you need to use words to reinforce your app's message, it means that there is something missing to your app icon, right? You are not using the full potential of graphics. So you should start, instead of focusing on how to optimize the writing, the text in your app icon, probably you should ask yourself another question. Am I using the right imagery in my app icon? Do I really need to express, to reinforce the message of my application through text? Or maybe there is another way I can do this, maybe through a more appropriate image. When you add text to your app icon, you are also putting your usability in danger because your app will look cluttered and very hard to decode. So I honestly recommend that you think it twice before actually inserting text in your app icon. Now let's take a look at our next don'ts. Avoid using photos. Well, this is quite clear, and I mean also the icons that I chose for this presentation give you an idea of why I'm suggesting not to use photos. Although photos and screenshots can represent very effectively apps features, it is better to opt for an idealized version of the subject. Another risk is that unless the shot is truly professional, the final effect might be very poor. What we recommend is that you create an artistic representation of your app's features, because this will give you the chance to give more emphasis to the specific features that you want to sell. And anyway, remember, once again, just like I said for the text, if you really have to use photos, make sure that you use professional shots. All right, let's move on to our next don't. Avoid replicas of hardware products. I mean, I guess that the whole meaning of these do's and don'ts is really suggested by the images that the icons that actually I chose for this presentation. Just look at the icon that you have on the screen. It tells everything. It can be tempting, I do understand this, it can be tempting to use symbols of very successful hardware products in your app icon. I mean, I'm talking about smartphones and tablets, and particularly branded products like an iPhone, an iPad, and so on, because this way you can take advantage of the popularity and the trust that are inspired by these products. People relate to those brands, so they recognize immediately those hardware, those products as reliable, trustworthy. However, you have to keep in mind that these symbols could be protected by copyright, which means that they cannot be reproduced in your app icon without official authorization. But it's not just a matter of copyright issues. Keep in mind that the design of these products change very frequently. So if you display a specific piece of hardware in your app icon, you are also risking giving your application a very dated look. I really don't want to comment too much on that, but take a look once again at the icon that you have on the screen. It tells everything, like I said. It is very, very dated. So I'm not just talking about copyright issues here, but I'm talking about giving a very dated look to your application. And that's the last thing that you want to do. All right, let's move on to our next don't. Avoid transparency. Once it has been downloaded, your app icon should be as visible as possible on users' home screens. If you create an application with a transparent background, it is very risky. It's a very bad idea because it will blend on your users' home screens and it will not look tappable. Instead, you want your application to jump out of the screen. You want your application to be able to scream, tap me, use me, open me. So that's the reason why all the main store guidelines recommend that you should not use alpha transparency in your app icon. Anyway, if despite this recommendation you still decide to submit your app with an icon on a transparent background, be aware that a dark background will be automatically added as a default action. So this means that your application, if you submit your application with a transparent background, your application will, your app icon will appear as the image in the middle of this series that you have here at the bottom of this slide, if no shine effect is added. Otherwise, if shine effect is added to it, it will look like the icon that you see on the right-hand side of the screen. Okay, so all these tips really help us realize how important app icons are for your app's overall usability. But another element that can dramatically impact user experience is the splash image. And once again, let's start with question number 1. What is a splash image? Well, a splash image, also called launch image, is the very first screen that your app displays to users while they're waiting for your app to be fully uploaded. Now, as users, as app users ourselves, we all know how crucial those few seconds of waiting can be. You will have to make sure that the waiting will be just a matter of milliseconds. But in case it takes a little bit longer, the very last thing that you want is to annoy your users with a shabby looking splash image. So that's the reason why, along with the app icon, the splash image is considered as one of the most crucial elements of your app design, because it can really help your users get a first impression of the application and figure out the type of contents and design awaiting them. In terms of benefits that it can bring to your app, well, the splash image is an amazing, a fantastic opportunity to provide a design introduction of your application. You know, you can describe, you can say something about the content that is awaiting your users just by looking at a splash image. It is also a very useful space to showcase branding elements, but try not to use actually that space to promote too much your brand, or even worse, other sponsors, because this is not just a space that you should use to promote your services or to promote your sponsors' services. This is just something that you should make your users' waiting more pleasant. Now, just like we said beforehand for the app icon, it is very important for the splash image to be consistent with what users are expected to find inside the application. And that's the reason why store guidelines suggest using a splash image very similar to the app's homepage. However, what I recommend that you do is that you do not copy entirely your app's homepage, because some of the elements of your user interface might change in time, and this could confuse users. I mean, imagine that you have created a splash image that is based on the very first user interface that you gave to your application. Then time goes by and you decide to refresh the layout of your application, but you forget to refresh your splash image. So the effect that you create in your users is very confusing and very frustrating once again, because they see a splash image with maybe some colors and specific style, and then the effect that they find in the actual application is totally different. This is something really that you should avoid. All right, so in terms of tips that I have for you is that basically the same concepts of consistency and simplicity that we discussed for app icons should be applied to splash images. In other words, try not to cram this page with superfluous, with not useful graphic elements and colors. And keep in mind that the main objective of this page is not to promote your services, but to make the waiting more pleasant for users. You're not trying to sell them something. You're just trying to improve the quality, the level of their user experience. I can see some questions popping up. I can see that some of our followers of this webinar are complaining about the quality of sound. Can you please confirm that you can hear me okay? Just use the live chats that you find on the right-hand side of the screen. Okay, right. Anyway, what I just want to remind you is that I just would like to ask you to bear with me for a couple of more minutes. We're almost done, and then I'm ready to answer all of your questions in the final part of this webinar. Anyway, don't worry, because this webinar is being recorded, so I will send you the recording of the webinar in a couple of hours right after the end of the webinar. So, and we'll also upload the recording of the webinar on our YouTube channel. I will give you the link in a couple of minutes. And so as of tomorrow morning, you will be able to actually to view the recording of the webinar online on our YouTube channel. Okay. So I was just recapping some tips to keep in mind when designing your splash image. Well, basically we come to the end of this webinar, and like I said at the beginning of the webinar, this topic is very, very wide, and we have decided to focus on the two crucial elements of each application. as from our first-hand experience with app development, we also know that a lot of our users sometimes find it quite hard to design very good app icons and splash images, and that's also the reason why we decided to start our webinars dedicated to this subject, to this wide subject that is app design, with splash image and app icon. Now, if you would like to receive some dedicated assistance on your mobile project, you can get in touch with us and we can arrange a live demo to explore together how Apps Builder can help you take your business mobile. What you have to do is simply wait until the end of the webinar, and when you leave the webinar, fill in our post-webinar survey and leave a phone number where we can reach out to you, we can contact you to schedule a live demo. So we can take a look together at the platform, you can explain to us your mobile project in details, and we can see how we can turn your idea into a fact, an application. Okay, and if you have further questions about the features that we have seen in this webinar, feel free to tweet me today or even in the following days on Apps Builder Twitter profile. The hashtag for this webinar is App Design Guide, this one that you see here. Okay, some useful contacts to get in touch with us over the next few days. So take a look at our support forum where you can find step-by-step instructions on how to make the most of Apps Builder's features. And take a look at our official blog where you can find plenty of resources, including our ebook that I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, infographics and recent stats and insights about the latest trends in the mobile industry. So not just about our platform features, but about if you are keen on the mobile industry, if you want to get yourself updated on the latest trends, take a look at our blog and you will find something useful. We're always very happy to hear from you, to receive your feedback, so feel free to drop us an email at support@appsbuilder.com. And like I said, we also have a YouTube channel where, as of tomorrow morning, you can find a recording of this webinar, as well as many other webinars that we held in past. And you can take a look at the recording of our past webinars and many other step-by-step tutorials. So now it's your turn. If you have any questions about some of the topics that we discussed together today, feel free to ask me all the questions. Use the live chat. All right, I don't see any specific questions, so this means that hopefully everything was quite clear. I'm glad with that. And before we end the webinar, I just want to leave you with our resource center, where you can download the ebook on the app design that I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. That's our homepage. I'm sure that you're probably already familiar with it. Well, basically, if you click on resources, you have the chance to access our resource center, where you can find plenty of resources, as you can see, ebooks, infographics, link to our blog, and some case studies to check out how our companies used Apps Builder and how they created their mobile presence using our platform. If you click on this section here, ebooks, you can see the list of all the ebooks that we have created and that are dedicated to subjects as mobile applications for different industries. And particularly the ebook that I recommended to you is this one, the App Design Handbook. So just click on this one and you will have the chance to download the ebook completely for free. Okay, that's it. I hope that you enjoyed this webinar. Thank you very much for your time. Take a look at our section here, webinars, if you want to register for our upcoming webinars. And like I said, check out our YouTube channel where, as of tomorrow morning, you can find a recording of this webinar. Once again, thank you very much for your time. I really hope that you find this webinar useful, and enjoy the rest of your day, and see you at our next webinar. Bye-bye.